They thought she was just the camp nurse, until a towering man charged. In seconds, he was flat on the ground, and silence fell over the barracks. That's when the recruits realized she wasn't just anyone. Lieutenant Jessica "Jess" Martinez had been assigned to Naval Special Warfare Basic Training Command in Coronado for exactly 9 weeks. At 5 feet 4 inches with shoulder-length auburn hair typically secured in a practical ponytail and warm brown eyes that conveyed both competence and compassion, she moved through her nursing duties with the kind of professional efficiency that made her practically invisible to most personnel. She carried her medical supplies with practiced precision, treated injuries with clinical expertise, and maintained the kind of supportive presence that characterized the best military nurses. To the SEAL candidates and training staff, she was simply their assigned medical officer, competent, caring, and completely unremarkable. The candidates knew her only by her formal role and gentle demeanor. Ma'am, when they needed medical attention, Nurse Martinez when discussing her among themselves, or simply the nurse in casual conversation. None of them had ever wondered about her background, her previous assignments, or what experiences had shaped her into the medical professional they saw every day. She was medical support, nothing more, someone who patched them up so they could continue their punishing training regimen. Lieutenant Martinez's daily routine was predictable and nurturing. She arrived early, reviewed candidate medical records, attended training briefings to understand potential injury risks, positioned herself strategically during exercises, and provided immediate care when needed. Her competence was unquestioned, her bedside manner was exceptional, and her presence was taken for granted by everyone at the facility. But assumptions can be dangerous, especially when they're made about people whose true backgrounds remain carefully concealed. Welcome to Silent Salute, where we discover that extraordinary capabilities often hide behind the most compassionate professional roles. Before we continue this incredible story, tell us in the comments which country you're watching from today. And if you believe that the most dangerous assumptions are those we make about people who seem to fit perfectly into caregiving roles, hit that subscribe button to support our channel. We're honored to share these remarkable stories with you. Hell Week was approaching for Class 298. 28 candidates from diverse military backgrounds, all enduring training designed to forge America's most elite maritime warriors. The daily routine was merciless, brutal physical conditioning, advanced tactical training, underwater demolition exercises, combat simulations, and psychological challenges that tested every aspect of human endurance and mental fortitude. Through it all, Lieutenant Martinez provided medical support with the same steady compassion that had characterized her entire assignment. The candidates had developed standard assumptions about her role and capabilities. She was professional medical support who ensured they remained healthy enough to continue the torturous training cycle. Her nursing knowledge was comprehensive, her emergency response skills were excellent, and her ability to handle training-related injuries was unquestioned. But she was also remarkably gentle, speaking with the kind of nurturing tone that seemed almost maternal in the harsh environment of SEAL training. Among the candidates was Petty Officer First Class David "Tank" Rodriguez, a former Navy explosive ordnance disposal specialist who'd served multiple combat deployments before applying for SEAL training. Rodriguez was respected by his fellow candidates for his technical expertise and steady nerves, but he shared the common assumption that nursing personnel operated outside the warrior mentality that defined special operations. Nurse Martinez is solid, Rodriguez had commented to his teammate during their 8th week. Probably the most caring medical officer I've worked with. She actually seems to worry about our well-being beyond just keeping us functional for training. Seaman Jake Wilson, who'd served as a hospital corpsman before SEAL training, offered perspective. Some nurses just have that natural caring instinct, Rodriguez. She probably went into nursing because she wanted to help people, not because she was looking for adventure. But Wilson's observation missed something important. Lieutenant Martinez's professional demeanor was caring, but there was something beneath the surface that suggested depths no one had bothered to explore. The situation that would change everything began during the 9th week of training, when Class 298 was scheduled for advanced combat medical training. This was a critical phase where candidates learned sophisticated trauma care, battlefield medicine, and life-saving procedures that could mean the difference between a teammate's survival or death in operational environments. Lieutenant Martinez was assigned to oversee the medical training evolution, positioned at her standard location where she could supervise candidate performance while remaining ready to intervene if training scenarios became too realistic or dangerous. Her role was essentially what it had always been: professional medical oversight and emergency response capability. The training was being conducted in a specialized medical facility designed for realistic trauma scenarios. The exercises were carefully controlled, with multiple safety protocols and experienced medical instructors supervising every aspect of the training. But advanced medical training always carried risks of injury that required immediate professional intervention. During a break in the afternoon training session, the facility received an unexpected visitor. Chief Warrant Officer Marcus Diesel Thompson, a former Army Special Forces medic, had arrived to discuss integration of battlefield medical procedures into SEAL training protocols. Thompson was an experienced combat medic who'd served countless missions supporting special operations teams, and his expertise was regularly utilized to enhance the realism of medical training scenarios. Thompson entered the medical training area to meet with senior instructors, scanning the facility to understand the current training setup and identify areas where his combat medical experience could enhance candidate preparation for operational environments. As Thompson walked through the training area, his attention moved across the various personnel, instructors, candidates, and support staff who made the medical training possible. His focus was professional and routine until it reached the supervision station where Lieutenant Martinez was organizing training materials. Thompson stopped walking. His entire demeanor shifted from casual professional assessment to something much more intense: recognition combined with what appeared to be genuine surprise and deep respect. He stared at Lieutenant Martinez for several long seconds, as if processing something unexpected and highly significant. Then, without warning, he snapped to rigid military attention and called out in a voice that carried clearly across the medical training area. "Angel." The single word hit the medical facility like a thunderbolt. Thompson's voice was filled with unmistakable recognition, profound respect, and something that sounded like reverence. But more importantly, the word wasn't a name. It was clearly a military call sign, the kind of operational identifier used only in the most classified and dangerous military missions. Lieutenant Martinez looked up from her training materials, and for the first time since her assignment to the training facility, her gentle composure shifted slightly. Her eyes met Thompson's, and something passed between them. A moment of recognition that suggested shared experiences and mutual respect that went far beyond routine military interactions. "Diesel," she replied quietly, her voice carrying a warmth and familiarity that no one at the training facility had ever heard before, but also something else, a kind of controlled intensity that seemed completely different from her usual nursing demeanor. Thompson held his position of attention for several more seconds, then slowly relaxed into a less formal posture. But his expression remained filled with obvious respect and what appeared to be amazement. "Ma'am," Thompson said, "I had no idea you were assigned here. It's an honor to see you again." The candidates and instructors who had witnessed this exchange were struggling to process what they'd seen. The gentle nurse they'd known for weeks had just been recognized by an experienced special operations medic, addressed by what was clearly an operational call sign, and treated with the kind of respect typically reserved for legendary combat veterans. Rodriguez, who'd been closest to the interaction, approached Lieutenant Martinez with obvious curiosity and growing respect. "Ma'am, that medic seemed to recognize you from previous assignments. Have you two worked together before?" Lieutenant Martinez's response was carefully measured. "Chief Thompson and I have crossed paths in previous assignments." But Thompson, still clearly impressed by the unexpected encounter, was less reserved about providing context. "Crossed paths?" he said, with obvious admiration in his voice. "Ma'am, that's putting it very mildly." Thompson looked around at the candidates and instructors who were listening to the conversation, then made a decision about how much information to share. "Gentlemen," Thompson said, "you've been working with one of the most legendary combat medics in special operations history. Lieutenant Martinez isn't just nursing support. She's someone who's saved lives in conditions that most people couldn't survive, much less operate in." The revelation hit the medical training area like a physical impact. The caring nurse they'd been taking for granted was actually a decorated special operations veteran with experience in missions that exceeded the backgrounds of most personnel at the facility. Wilson stepped forward with obvious respect and curiosity. "Lieutenant Martinez, ma'am, if you don't mind me asking, what was your previous assignment before nursing duty?" Lieutenant Martinez seemed to be weighing how much information to share, understanding that Thompson's recognition had already revealed more about her background than she'd intended to disclose. "My previous assignments involved specialized medical operations that required both clinical and tactical capabilities," she replied carefully. But Thompson, still clearly impressed by the encounter, was willing to provide more context. Lieutenant Martinez was a team medic for some of the most classified rescue and recovery operations in the special operations community. The callsign Angel was earned through missions where she provided medical care under impossible conditions while fighting her way to wounded personnel. The candidates were beginning to understand that their nurse had operational experience that probably exceeded their own training and definitely their future assignments. Combat medical operations in hostile territory were among the most dangerous and demanding work in the military. Rodriguez asked the question everyone was thinking. "Lieutenant, how do you go from combat operations to providing nursing support for training exercises?" Lieutenant Martinez's answer reflected the complex career paths that characterize the most experienced military medical professionals. Military medical careers involve multiple phases of service. Sometimes the most valuable contribution you can make is ensuring the next generation of operators receives the best possible medical training and support. Senior Chief Petty Officer Anderson, the lead medical instructor who'd been observing the entire interaction, approached with obvious interest in understanding Lieutenant Martinez's background and its implications for medical training operations. "Lieutenant Martinez," Anderson said, "I'm beginning to understand that your background might be more relevant to our medical training operations than we initially realized. Would you be willing to discuss how your operational experience might enhance our training scenarios?" Lieutenant Martinez considered the question carefully, understanding that Thompson's recognition had fundamentally changed her role at the training facility. "Senior Chief, I believe my operational experience could contribute to developing more realistic medical training scenarios that better prepare candidates for the complexities of actual combat medical situations." Anderson was intrigued by the possibility. "Lieutenant, what specific aspects of medical training could benefit from your operational experience?" "Scenarios where medical care must be provided under hostile fire, where medics must fight their way to wounded personnel, and where life and death medical decisions must be made under extreme combat stress with limited resources." Anderson understood that Lieutenant Martinez was offering to share training methodologies and operational insights that came from providing medical care during some of the most dangerous missions in the special operations community. The conversation was interrupted when the facility's emergency alarm system activated, indicating an immediate security threat that required lockdown procedures. An agitated former military contractor had somehow gained unauthorized access to the base and was moving through the facility in an unpredictable and increasingly threatening manner. "All personnel implement immediate lockdown procedures," the facility's public address system announced. "Security threat on base. Remain in secure positions until further notice." The candidates and instructors immediately implemented their training, seeking defensive positions and preparing to protect themselves and others until security forces could neutralize the threat. But the intruder's location and psychological state were unknown, creating a situation where personnel throughout the facility were potentially at risk. Lieutenant Martinez was positioned near the main entrance to the medical training area, relatively exposed to potential threat from multiple directions. The standard protocol would be for her to seek secure cover and wait for security forces to resolve the situation. Instead, she did something that shocked everyone who witnessed it. The intruder appeared at the entrance to the medical training area, a massive man, approximately 6 feet 4 inches, and clearly over 250 pounds, with the kind of muscular build that suggested serious physical training. He was shouting angrily about grievances against the military and seemed intent on confronting anyone he encountered. His size and obvious agitation made him an extremely dangerous threat to everyone in the facility. But what made the situation even more dangerous was what happened next. The intruder spotted Lieutenant Martinez, and something about her presence seemed to trigger his rage even more intensively. He began advancing directly toward her with obvious hostile intent, his massive frame and aggressive movement pattern creating a threat that seemed impossible for the relatively small nurse to handle. "You people think you're so special," the intruder shouted as he charged toward Lieutenant Martinez. "I'll show you what real combat looks like." Lieutenant Martinez stood her ground as 250 pounds of muscle and rage advanced toward her with obvious intent to cause serious harm. The size difference was dramatic. She appeared to be less than half his weight and more than a foot shorter. Everyone watching expected her to retreat, call for help, or at minimum, try to put obstacles between herself and the charging intruder. The smart move would be to avoid confrontation until security forces arrived. Instead, Lieutenant Martinez did something that defied everything the candidates thought they knew about their gentle nurse. As the massive intruder closed the final distance, Lieutenant Martinez moved with a speed and precision that seemed to come from extensive training in close-quarters combat. Her movement was economical, controlled, and designed to use the intruder's size and momentum against him. What happened next took less than 5 seconds, but demonstrated tactical capabilities that exceeded those of most military personnel. She sidestepped the intruder's charge with perfect timing, used his forward momentum to unbalance him, and then applied a combination of leverage and joint manipulation that sent the massive man crashing to the floor with devastating effectiveness. Her technique was textbook perfect, a demonstration of martial arts expertise that neutralized a significantly larger opponent with minimal apparent effort. The intruder hit the floor hard, and before he could recover, Lieutenant Martinez had secured him with submission techniques that prevented any possibility of continued resistance. Her control was complete, professional, and accomplished without causing unnecessary injury. "Threat neutralized," she reported calmly into her radio. "One individual secured, no weapons recovered, no injuries to personnel. Request security response for custody transfer." The entire sequence had lasted less than 5 seconds. The massive intruder had gone from charging with obvious intent to harm to being completely controlled by someone less than half his size. The medical training area was absolutely silent. 28 SEAL candidates, multiple instructors, and a special operations medic stood frozen, staring at a nurse who had just neutralized a threat that would have challenged most military personnel. Thompson was the first to speak, and his voice was filled with the kind of recognition that comes from understanding exceptional capability. "That," Thompson said quietly, "is why they called her Angel. She didn't just save lives through medical care. She fought her way through whatever was necessary to reach wounded personnel and bring them home." Rodriguez approached Lieutenant Martinez with obvious respect and amazement. "Lieutenant, where did you learn those techniques?" Lieutenant Martinez was checking the secured intruder's condition while responding. Previous operational assignments required integration of medical and combat capabilities. You can't provide medical care in hostile territory if you can't neutralize threats that prevent you from reaching wounded personnel. Wilson asked the question everyone was thinking. "Lieutenant, what kind of operations were you involved in that required those capabilities?" Lieutenant Martinez's answer provided insight into missions that most military medical personnel never encounter. Combat medical operations in denied territory, casualty evacuation under hostile fire, and personnel recovery missions where traditional support wasn't available and medical personnel had to function as both medics and combatants. Senior Chief Anderson, who had witnessed the entire incident, understood that Lieutenant Martinez's demonstration had revealed capabilities that fundamentally changed her role at the training facility. "Lieutenant Martinez," Anderson said, "I think it's time we discussed expanding your role here beyond standard medical support." Lieutenant Martinez accepted the expanded role, understanding that Thompson's recognition and the security incident had revealed capabilities that could contribute to SEAL medical training in ways that had never been possible before. Over the following weeks, Lieutenant Martinez transitioned from her cover role as routine nursing support to active participation in advanced medical training development. Her combination of clinical expertise and combat experience created training scenarios that were far more realistic and challenging than anything previously available. What we're developing, Senior Chief Anderson explained to the medical training staff, is integrated medical training that reflects the reality of modern special operations. Medical emergencies occur during combat operations. Combat medics must be prepared to fight their way to casualties and provide care under hostile fire. These skills must be integrated, not treated as separate functions. Lieutenant Martinez worked with the training staff to create scenarios that tested candidates' ability to provide medical care while under attack, to neutralize threats that prevented access to wounded personnel, and to make life-and-death medical decisions while engaging hostile forces. The operations I participated in, Lieutenant Martinez explained to the candidates, required understanding that combat medics aren't just medical support. We're combatants whose primary mission is saving lives, but whose secondary mission is eliminating anything that prevents us from accomplishing that primary mission. Her training scenarios included realistic combat medical situations where candidates had to fight their way to casualties, medical evacuation exercises where nursing personnel led tactical teams, and decision-making scenarios where medical and combat requirements had to be balanced under extreme stress. Chief Thompson, who had triggered the revelation of Lieutenant Martinez's background, became a regular participant in the enhanced medical training programs. His special operations medical experience was integrated with Lieutenant Martinez's combat scenarios, creating training that reflected the complex coordination required for actual special operations medical missions. Working with Angel again, Thompson told the candidates, reminds me why she was so effective as a combat medic. She understood that successful medical operations require integration of all capabilities, clinical expertise, tactical proficiency, combat skills, and leadership under fire. The candidates quickly learned that Lieutenant Martinez's operational experience provided insights that enhanced every aspect of their medical training. Her understanding of combat medicine, threat neutralization, and decision-making under extreme stress created learning opportunities that exceeded anything available through conventional medical training methods. Rodriguez, who had initially viewed Lieutenant Martinez as simply a caring nurse, became one of her most dedicated students. Lieutenant, your approach to integrating medical and combat capabilities has completely changed how I think about battlefield medicine. You've shown us that the most effective combat medics are those who can eliminate threats and save lives simultaneously. Wilson, the former corpsman, was particularly influenced by Lieutenant Martinez's perspective on special operations medicine. Ma'am, your experience has taught me that medical personnel and special operations aren't just support. They're full combatants whose medical expertise enhances rather than compromises their tactical effectiveness. The medical training programs that Lieutenant Martinez developed were eventually adopted throughout special operations commands, establishing new standards for integrated medical tactical capability. Her methods influenced military medical training worldwide and enhanced the effectiveness of special operations medical personnel globally. But perhaps Lieutenant Martinez's greatest contribution was demonstrating that true operational excellence required integration of multiple capabilities rather than narrow medical specialization. Her experience providing medical care during classified combat operations had provided insights that enhanced training for all special operations medical personnel. The story of Lieutenant Angel Martinez became legendary at the training facility, shared with new classes as an example of how extraordinary capabilities often hide behind compassionate professional roles. Her example reminded candidates that in special operations, the most valuable people are often those whose true experience and capabilities remain carefully concealed behind routine assignments. The most important lesson you can learn here, instructors would tell new candidates, is that exceptional capability often comes in unexpected forms. The person providing medical support might be someone who's fought in battles more dangerous than anything you'll ever encounter. Years later, when Lieutenant Martinez transitioned to other assignments, her legacy lived on in the enhanced medical training programs she developed and in the understanding that true medical excellence often requires maintaining operational security about combat capabilities and experience. Her story reminded everyone that in special operations, as in life, the most dangerous assumptions are those we make about people who seem to fit perfectly into caregiving roles, because the most exceptional people are often those who choose to hide their extraordinary combat capabilities behind compassionate professional responsibilities. Lieutenant Martinez's call sign, Angel, became synonymous with the integration of medical and combat excellence, representing the highest standards of special operations medical capability and the understanding that the most effective combat medics are those who can eliminate threats and save lives with equal proficiency. Thompson's simple recognition of her call sign had revealed not just individual capability, but a broader understanding of how the most exceptional military medical professionals contribute to developing the next generation of special operations personnel. Her willingness to share operational experience through medical training development demonstrated that true leadership continues long after combat assignments end. The moment when Thompson had snapped to attention and called out Angel had lasted only seconds, but its impact continued for years, reminding everyone that extraordinary capabilities often hide behind the most caring appearances, and that the people we take for granted may be the ones with the most important contributions to make. This story was brought to you by Silent Salute. Before we leave you today, here's our question. Have you ever discovered that someone you knew in a caregiving or support capacity actually possessed extraordinary combat experience or tactical capabilities that they kept hidden? Have you encountered people whose gentle professional demeanor concealed remarkable warrior skills? Tell us in the comments about the moments when you realized you'd been working alongside someone whose combat experience exceeded your own understanding. And if you believe that the most exceptional warriors are often those who don't need to advertise their capabilities, hit that subscribe button to support our channel. Every story reminds us that extraordinary combat abilities often hide behind compassionate professional roles, and that the people we notice least may be the ones with the most to teach us about true warrior spirit. We'll see you in the next story, where we'll discover another incredible tale of hidden expertise and unexpected revelation.